You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Today, I am both privileged and pleased to share with you an exclusive interview I did on this very podcast with former President Jimmy Carter on May 3rd, 2014. This interview is unique for many reasons. For one, Carter was the first man and one of only a very few men ever to be a guest invited to this program, because women were and still are the priority. For another, he holds forth frankly, with astonishing clarity, strength, and principled politics about the centrality of such issues as violence against women, the vast sexual exploitation industry and its power, the sexual enslavement of girls and women in prostitution and pornography, the role religion tragically plays in all this, and the primal necessity for global feminism to ensure the peace and security of all nations. 2 weeks ago, it was announced that former President Jimmy Carter, who at age 98 is the longest living president in U.S. history, and he has decided to forego further medical treatment and will enter hospice care at his home in Georgia. That was from a statement by the Carter Center for Human Rights in Georgia. The announcement went on to say that, quote, after a series of short hospital stays, former U.S. President Carter decided to spend his remaining time at home with his family and receive hospice care instead of additional medical intervention. The Carter family asks for privacy during this time and is grateful for the concern shown by his many admirers. Close quote. The center did not elaborate on what conditions had prompted the recent hospital visits or his decision to enter hospice care. Mr. Carter has survived a series of health crises in recent years, including a bout with skin cancer, melanoma, which spread to his liver and brain, as well as repeated falls. The former president lives with his wife, Rosalind Carter, age 95, in a modest ranch house that the couple built in Plains, Georgia, in 1961. It's always preferable, I think, to honor someone while they're still alive to, perhaps, possibly enjoy it, or others can, rather than staging deathbed reconciliations or waiting until they are safely 6 feet underground. So I am extremely proud to offer you this exclusive interview, and I'm proud of him for doing it. But before we hear that conversation, we need to go inside the headlines. Distinguished New York Times journalist Peter Baker wrote that former President Jimmy Carter, in one of his last public acts, filed a brief in 2022, just last year, supporting an appeal by conservation groups seeking to overturn a court decision permitting a gravel road to be built through the Izembek National Wildlife Refuge. He argued that the construction would undercut the Alaska National Interest Land Conservation Act, which he had signed into law. He was said to be working on that issue as recently as this past February. In the brief, he wrote, quote, "My name is Jimmy Carter. In my lifetime, I have been a farmer, a naval officer, a Sunday school teacher, an outdoorsman, a democracy activist, a builder, a governor of Georgia, and a recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. And from 1977 to 1981, I had the privilege of serving as the 39th President of the United States. Period. Close quote. Indeed. It was a characteristically accurate, yet humble, understatement. Carter was a political sensation in his day, a new generation Democrat who, after a single term as governor of Georgia, shocked the political world by beating a host of better-known rivals to win his party's presidential nomination in 1976, and then besting the incumbent Republican president, Gerald R. Ford, in the fall. Over his 4 years in office, Carter sought to restore trust in government following the Vietnam War and the Watergate scandal, and by ushering in reforms that were meant to transform politics. He negotiated the landmark Camp David Accords, making peace between Israel and Egypt, an agreement that remains the foundation of Middle East relations. But a sour economy and a 444-day hostage crisis in Iran, in which 52 Americans were held captive, undercut his public support, and he lost his bid for re-election to former Governor Ronald Reagan of California in 1980. Gary Sick, who was Carter's chief aide on Iran during the hostage crisis, wrote in his book October Surprise that Reagan's campaign manager, William Casey, had reached out to the Iranians to implore them to delay releasing the hostages until after the November elections, because the hostage situation was largely responsible for Carter's low popularity numbers. This gambit was virtually admitted later on by the Reagan administration, and it worked. After Reagan's inauguration, a Secret Service agent pushed through the crowd at the U.S. Capitol to tell former President Carter, who had been up for days and nights trying to get the hostages out, that at 12:33 p.m., the first plane carrying the hostages had taken off from Tehran, and the second had left 9 minutes later. Reagan got the word at the inaugural luncheon. It was the first official announcement he would make to the American people, coasting on William Casey's carefully planned and planted and executed delay. The hostages, on the 444th day of their captivity, were set free. But Carter didn't stop. It's an arguable fact that Jimmy Carter basically invented the post-presidency. Previous presidents had taken to golf and elite retirement, with maybe having a book or two ghostwritten and playing kingmaker for candidates in their own party on the side. But Carter, he went into a second bloom more impressive than his electoral one. He and Rosalynn spent his post-presidency on a series of philanthropic causes around the world, building houses for the poor, combating guinea worm, promoting human rights in places of oppression, monitoring elections, and seeking to end conflict. The Carter Center in Georgia is a non-governmental, not-for-profit organization, an NGO, founded in 1982 by the couple, partnering with Emory University just after Carter's defeat in the 1980 presidential election. In 2000, he and Rosalynn left the Southern Baptist Convention, that's the U.S.'s largest Protestant denomination, with 15.9 million members, despite their both being devout persons of faith. Why did they leave? Because the convention refused to ordain women as deacons in the church. Carter said at the time, "I'm familiar with the verses they've quoted about wives being subjugated to their husbands, but in my opinion, this is a distortion of the meaning of Scripture. I personally feel the Bible says all people are equal in the eyes of God. I personally feel that women should play an absolutely equal role in service of Christ in the church." Period. Close quote. Carter's work as a former president, in many ways, has eclipsed his time in the White House, eventually earning him the Nobel Peace Prize. It also set a standard for other post-presidencies, a standard of activism. What was not expected, however, was that he would openly declare that women's worldwide struggle for equality and freedom was the key to ending all other oppressions. We need to take a short break here, and then I will be right back with this exclusive and extraordinary interview with President Jimmy Carter. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And here, without further ado, in his own stunningly pro-feminist words, is former President Jimmy Carter. This exclusive interview first aired and posted on May 3rd, 2014, but we offer it here also as a separate special report because of its importance. Jimmy Carter was the 39th President of the United States and was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2002. He is the first male guest ever to appear on Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Good morning, this is Jimmy Carter, Robin.
Good morning, Mr. President. Welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
Well, it's good to be with you. Thank you very much.
Well, first, I have to convey to you a message from our mutual pal, Jane Fonda, who sends...
Oh, yeah, well,
she sends you...
I'm kind of halfway in love with her, as she knows.
Well, she sends you lots of love, and she says she is so proud of you for this book. Jane and Gloria Steinem and I are the co-founders of the Women's Media Center, which is the mother of this program.
I know that, and I'm very proud of you and grateful to you.
Oh, well, nothing compared to the gratitude we feel for you. Listen, this extraordinary book, A Call to Action, Women, Religion, Violence, and Power, you write in it, quote, "The most serious and unaddressed worldwide challenge is the deprivation and abuse of women and girls." Good grief, we have been toiling in the vineyards on these issues for 40-odd years in the global women's movement, but only you could make David Letterman listen to women's suffering.
Well, you know, I think it is more important than any war that's going on or any threat of conflict or any political deadlock that exists in the globe today. And it's been going on for a long time, and the problem is that leaders in the world don't know and don't want to know how bad the abuse of women and girls is, not only in other countries, but also in the United States.
That's very true. The worldwide audience in 110 countries for this program is comprised of mostly women and some men of conscience like yourself. But you're the first male guest ever to appear. You're the special circumstance. But this audience actually lives and knows the litany of issues, the FGM and sexual slavery and child marriage and forced marriage and honor killings. So this is one place you don't have to do the litany, and hopefully we can go deeper. I want to start with the issue of prostitution. The Carter Center's Mobilizing Faith for Women initiative urges, as one of its 21 points that you have in the book, adoption of the Nordic model on prostitution, which is the one that the global women's movement endorses too, prosecuting pimps and brothel owners and customers, but not the prostituted women. Say some more about that and why that's a human rights issue.
Well, this has been debated and tested for thousands of years, the subject of prostitution, and there's been a dramatic difference of opinion expressed through law in Sweden and also in the Netherlands, and now is being emulated by other countries. Sweden has taken the most enlightened and the most effective position by saying that the prostitutes, many of whom are involuntarily human sexual slaves, should not be prosecuted, but the prosecution should be focused on the brothel owners and the pimps and the male customers.
Exactly.
And this has been extremely effective by dramatically reducing the amount of prostitution in Sweden, but also particularly almost eliminating the involuntary servitude of girls who were brought into the slave trade. And when they've been tried in other countries in a different way, it has not worked. And now Germany and Iceland and other countries, including France now, is considering, also Canada is considering adopting the Swedish model, and that's what we should do in the United States, because in the United States there are 50 girls who are arrested in the United States for every one brothel owner or pimp or male customer.
You know that the European Parliament voted 3-1 for the Nordic model. But here's where we need advice from you, because you're a great figure on human rights. We are right at this moment fighting a battle with, of all places, Amnesty International, the great human rights organization, in which a very strong factor is pushing hard for the organization to take a position on decriminalizing not only the women, which we are for, but decriminalizing the pimps, quote, human rights, and not criminalizing the John. How do we deal with the cognitive dissonance that doesn't see that the buying and selling of a human being for sex is a violation of human rights?
Well, one thing I'd be glad to do is to issue a statement myself with your help and guidance on this subject, because it's inconceivable to me that Amnesty International or any other organization that respects human rights would endorse slave masters who buy young girls and put them into involuntary servitude to be sex slaves. And when they go and do this with brothel owners and pimps, then to me that directly violates the basic principles of human rights.
Oh, I will go anywhere to work with you on this. This would be so very important. Yes.
If you send me the information that Amnesty, or quote from Amnesty International, I'll write directly to Amnesty International. I'll also issue a public statement on the subject.
That would be just heaven. Thank you, sir. Okay, another question. I have limited time, so I have to really make the most of it. The Convention to End All Forms of Discrimination Against Women was signed under your direction as president, for which a belated thank you, by the way. But, of course, it has never been ratified by Congress, putting us in a category with Iran and Somalia. Talk about the difference it would make to have CEDAW ratified, and, for that matter, to finally have the Equal Rights Amendment put women in the Constitution.
Well, when China and other countries ratify this convention, which is basically a human rights statement, a declaration of human rights for women, then it's really an adverse reaction on our own country and a reflection on the integrity and wisdom of the U.S. Senate. One of the factors is that the Senate has right-wing members who won't approve anything that originates in the United Nations, and there are other, minor groups around the country who don't want to take any position between men and women on anything that relates to sex. So these are the things that we have to overcome in our country, and I hope that we continue this. I would really like to see the women's movement and the Carter Center and others reinitiate the effort to pass the Equal Rights Amendment to the U.S. Constitution.
Me too. I think it would make a huge difference. I mean, we sort of lost it by stealth last time around. But I think all of the things that they warned us against, have come to pass, and the world hasn't ended. Unisex bathrooms and women in the military. And so these are now de facto. So I don't know what the right wing would complain about. And I'm sure they'd come up with something.
Well, they will. But, we just have to be able to confront them with the facts.
Yeah.
I don't think many people know that slavery exists as it does in the United States today, with 100,000 young girls sold into sexual slavery every year, according to the U.S. State Department.
Yes.
These things are not known, and the fact that sexual abuse against women on college campuses is rampant.
Yes.
And is concealed by college administrators. These things are not known, and I think when they do become known, there'll be a much more support publicly and otherwise for an equal rights amendment for women in general terms.
We're trying to get the word out. It's one reason why we started the Women's Media Center, because we realized that if we can't get it out through the media, then all the work we do is just spinning our wheels.
Of course, I understand that thoroughly, and not only in my family. Obviously, my wife is strongly supportive of this. My daughter Amy, and so forth, and we have a lot of granddaughters that are on board. So the whole Carter family, male and female, are fully supportive of what you all are doing.
Oh, thank you, sir. You write in the book about violence and religion as two of the main tools used to, suppress women. Let's talk about violence for a moment. You talk about the normalization of violence having a compounded effect on women, which of course it does. Talk about ways of separating the eroticizing of violence from a definition of manhood. I once wrote an entire book about that, but I still haven't figured out how to separate those two so that manhood isn't somehow confused in the minds of young boys with committing violence.
Well, I give three examples in general terms, plus some other smaller ones. One is that the United States is the foremost warmonger on earth. We have been to war unilaterally more than any other country in the world since the United Nations was formed, with about 30 different adventures involving military weapons in foreign countries. That's one thing. The second one is that we have now degenerated as a society into a strictly punishment society rather than a rehabilitation for those who commit crimes. Since I left the governor's mansion, for instance, we now have 7.5 times as many people in prison in America as any other country, as we did in those days, and we have more prisoners per capita and total than any other country on earth. And we have 8 times as many black women now in prison as we did when I left the White House. And these things are combined with the fact that America is the only country in this hemisphere, and the only country in NATO, obviously, that has a death penalty.
Exactly.
And this, again, derogates human life, and it gives kind of a carte blanche for people who want to abuse innocent people and not to treat them with the basic characteristics of compassion and concern that all religions teach.
Yeah. Do you think, because we're sort of an adolescent country, a relatively young country?
Well, we're backing away. I think we are now more committed to these kinds of crime than we were before. All the time I was governor and all the time I was president, the Supreme Court had put a moratorium on the death penalty, for instance. And when I was governor back in the 1970s, I competed with other governors throughout this nation in seeing who could have the smallest prison population of all.
Yeah.
And now, of course, the competition is who can have the most people.
Yeah, shocking. Wrong direction.
I know we're going in the wrong direction, so we're not getting better. We're getting worse. And as far as pay for women is concerned, it's now 23% less than men, and that's exactly the same level it was in the year 2000, about 15 years ago. So we're not making any progress on equality of pay, for instance. There
is a remarkable book that I would recommend to you, and it's not even one that you wrote or I wrote, so it must be really remarkable. It's by Valerie Hudson. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Sex and World Peace. She's the lead scholar of a team of scholars. They did a 12-year empirical study amassing enormous data that I think will be of use to the Carter Center. More than, I believe, 20 countries, proving that the most reliable arbiter of a state's aggressiveness or peacefulness is none of the factors that we've all previously believed. It's not civil society or natural resources or GDP or geopolitical situation. The most reliable arbiter of a state's aggressiveness or peacefulness is how it treats its women. So this is not only a matter of human rights and moral justice for women, but it's a matter of global security, isn't it?
Absolutely. There's no doubt, I quote in my book 2 United Nations Security Council resolutions that have passed and are binding on the United States. And they require that when peace talks are taking place between any two countries or involved in a civil war sponsored by the United Nations, the peace effort is, then women have to be involved. And that's something that everybody recognizes. I've been involved very deeply in Liberia, for instance, in South Sudan. And it was only when women got involved in the peace process
Right.
that the men back down and quit fighting each other.
1325, the resolution 13. But
That's
it isn't.
exactly
But
right.
it isn't always enforced. I mean, now it's got a
No,
little.
it's not.
A little
It's
more
not,
teeth.
because men are still kind of in charge, and men don't want to admit that that women deserve a strong voice in establishing peace.
Well, how do we clone you? We have been longing for principled people of faith, given the way that religion is abused and used as a major tool against women. We have been longing for principled people of faith to speak out for a long time, and that you have come out with this book means more than I can tell you. The book is called A Call to Action, Women, Religion, Violence, and Power. The Carter Center can be reached at, tell me if I'm wrong, www.thecartercenter.org?
That's exactly right. And I hope everybody that believes in what the principles that you and I have just discussed will get in touch with us and let us form a phalanx of people who are working on the same issue.
It's a resource center. It initiates actions. The People of Faith initiative is remarkable, and it also will report on what people are doing. So call in and help them as well. Oh, exactly. Mr. President, thank you for this.
When I have a conflict in my Bible teaching and certain verses are selected to show that women are not equal to men, I always go back to what Jesus Christ did. He never said one word or committed one action that didn't exalt the status of women and girls. So that's why I believe that my faith is the foundation for what we're trying to do with equality. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed talking to you.
We have to take another short break here, but I will return directly with, yes, some fighting words. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
People of faith. Are those fighting words? These days, in most cases, people of faith are fighting words, since sadly they're used as boastful self-identification and also to describe populations in this country that have chosen to be willfully ignorant, nativist, bigoted, racist, sexist, homophobic, all sorts of other bad things, and generally rabidly right-wing. And then, to our surprise, along comes a genuine article or two. Thus we have Rosalind Carter and Jimmy Carter, serious Christians with a sense of humor. I met them both and shared a stage with him at a conference held at the Carter Center in Georgia, inspired by the original podcast you just heard. A conference on the sex industry and its coordinated, hugely well-financed assault on women and girls through pornography, prostitution, trafficking in sex and in surrogacy, birth, and in harvested organs, and the horrific systems upon which all those depend: drugs, alcohol, kidnappings, poverty, violence. It was an amazing and constructive conference. He did, of course, write the letter to Amnesty, and he made it public, and then the conference grew out of that. But also, it targeted the assault on our language. Like Trumpisms, the abasement of truth-telling in our speech is part of the problem. rebranding by the sex industry of the words sexual slavery as, quote, sex work, normalizing the horror and the terror and the sickness, as if a child of 8 or 6 or 7 wakes up and says, oh, gee, it's work like any other work. I want to be a hooker when I grow up. Nobody says that. Nobody wants that. Mr. Carter has defied illness and death for years, outlasting 2 presidents who followed him as well as his own vice president. After his melanomas spread to his brain in 2015, he drew praise for announcing that publicly. Even as he went through treatment, he continued to teach Sunday school at Maranatha Baptist Church in Plains, Georgia, as he had sworn he would do. Within months, he announced he was cancer-free. In 2019, he fell at least 3 times, at one point breaking a hip, and at another requiring 14 stitches. Each time he bounced back, even showing up for a Habitat for Humanity home-building project shortly after one serious tumble. But he has slowly retreated from public life lately, and he couldn't attend President Biden's inauguration in 2021, although Mr. Biden made a pilgrimage to Plains in April of that year to pay his respects. Meanwhile, Rosalind and, yes, Jimmy, persisted steadily in their faith and in their works, never resting on any laurels, always pushing the possibilities. If only more people of faith practiced their faith to be more like the Carters. May what's left of their time here on this planet, so well earned, be joyful, and may their faith sustain them. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter, and remember to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag #FightingWords. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and now Instagram at @TheRobinMorgan, and you can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net and find my latest book of poems, Dark Matter, and my brand new novel, Parallax, wherever books are sold. Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the Women's Media Center. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Executive producer as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer of this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us again next time on Women's Media Center Live.